Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Superhero Spotlight Week. And with me this afternoon is a true superhero of fintech, repeat entrepreneur, founder and CEO of ComplyAdvantage, Charlie Delingpole. And Charlie is bringing us his expert insight on the VC fintech explosion and its impact on operational compliance teams. Charlie, good to see you. How are you?
It's fantastic to be here, Steve, amongst such esteemed company, live from Silicon Hertfordshire, where you are now.
Silicon Hertfordshire, brilliant. So, look, Charlie, congratulations on the epic fundraise. I guess that's you're still enjoying the success of that one.
Yeah. Exactly. So, yes. By way of context, we had a well-known bank called Goldman Sachs invest in us last week, which we announced. It's the first investment by Goldman in any regtech company. So we're really excited to have their support and their network as we expand to solve the problems of financial crime. I guess that was an extension of our Series C, so it takes up to $70 million raised. Greatly expands our war chest. I think we hired 14 engineers last week, so we've been really trying to scale the engineering team and the go-to-market team. So really like Currency Cloud, we're a global company working with hundreds of fintechs, and those funds really help us with that ambition and scale. So great to have Goldman Sachs on board.
And maybe there'll be a nice marquee customer for you as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. So look, on the fundraising environment, so we've really seen an explosion of investment into fintech the last 5 or 6 years, in particular since 2018. I think we were talking the other day. There was something like $128 billion invested in the space in 2018. It's been growing at a rate around about 25%, and it's currently projected to continue growing at that rate well into 2022. What do you make of that?
Yeah, so I think that trend's been really accelerating recently. So I think last week you saw Paysen raise 125 million at 700 million valuation. You saw Spot On raise 125 million. You saw OPay raise 400 million. So that's kind of $1 billion just in the space of like 3 days raised on TechCrunch. So I think that isn't a new trend. I think what you've seen since I started Market Invoice back in 2009 is this constant wave of ever increasing billions being poured into every vertical within fintech. So that's insurtech, that's payments, that's lending, and also regtech, which is ComplyAdvantage. So I think what you saw 10 years ago was banks like HSBC, Barclays, very, very concentrated, few banks servicing every single vertical and country. And I think what you've seen with the likes of Currency Cloud and other companies is the ability for them to scale very, very quickly and have the infrastructure available, which wasn't available for companies launching, say, 10 years ago. So with the billions of dollars being poured into fintech, you've also seen the maturation and specialization of the various subcomponents of the ecosystem. And that's partly why, apart from the people and other reasons, why I love being on your famous podcast, Steve, is because we have so many commonalities together. So I think like Currency Cloud, at ComplyAdvantage, we like to work with hundreds of different fintechs. So for instance, we launched a program last month called Comply Launch, where we're working with lots of early stage fintechs, and we'll happily give them free access to our best-in-class AML tools for free whilst they scale. So, but yeah, I think the problem that I faced personally back in 2009 was I was the money laundering reporting officer of a fintech company, and like any fintech, you just raise $100 million. You need to be able to scale, and the question is, how do you scale that without going to jail, or how do you scale with integrity, right? And I think the answer that we had was, I guess, what we're calling now like a hyperscale data set. So you need to have data generated across the whole internet, covering every person and company in the whole world, rather than just a collection of analysts manually updating information like it's 1970s. So that was our kind of unique perspective on fintech scaling and reg tech and financial crime, all of which are going to be hugely resonant with both Currency Cloud and your legion of fintech fans.
So you've grown phenomenally well over the last few years, and it's no secret we work with you. But even in the banking sector, and from our supplier side, you've got a phenomenal reputation as if you can make compliance sexy, but you've done compliance right.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time we met, actually, you were talking about this enormous database of companies that you've built. How do you go about building such a big database like that?
So I think our kind of philosophy has evolved a bit recently. So I think primarily it's the people and architects and engineers that you have. And I think in the world that we inhabit, a great engineer or a great executive will be 10 times, 50 times better than an average one. So I think at the core, it's kind of hiring the very best talent. So we have a team of circa 150 people, the vast majority of which are in the UK, architecting and building that. And I think what you've seen in the past few years is the emergence of technologies like machine learning and natural language processing, which are really emerging. And all of this allows for all kinds of new innovations to happen. So at the core, what we're doing is ultimately moving towards tracking every person and company and every fact about every person and linking them together in the whole world. So what we have now available via the API is, I think, roughly 15 million bad people and companies. And so for each person, we can say, this is Michael. He's involved with sex trafficking, wildlife trafficking, financial crime. He's linked to Jeffrey Epstein. There are companies called Butterfly Trust that he's funneling money through. They're also linked to North Korean gang violence or the Medellin cartel in South America. But at the core, what we're doing is taking all the information from the whole internet, sources that we purchased or collected or aggregated, refining it and building simple profiles, and then exposing it via an API with the configurability around matching algorithms, different alphabets and languages, and making that available via specific workflows. So that kind of match like the requirements to scale very quickly with integrity. So of course, like each of those components you can interrogate and go down for another half an hour each, but that's the kind of top level overview.
It's quite a database, and who's who of bad guys you're collecting there. So obviously the product speaks for itself, and the platform and the capabilities speak for themselves. But in terms of how you've grown your business, so ComplyAdvantage, you're working with some of the fastest growing startups. You've got a phenomenal reputation with the banking community, as I said earlier. You're also working with organisations like Gemini, Affirm, Robinhood, even mainstream like Santander. I mean, I made a glib comment about Goldman Sachs earlier, may becoming a client as well. So you really have got an amazing group of customers and an amazing number of customers. What's what do you attribute the take up there? What's been your success in going to market and being so successful in being able to achieve such a wide range of customer acquisition so quickly?
So I think fundamentally there was a huge problem which we wanted to solve. So I started the company on this desk back in 2014, and that's because we had a client who was a client of Currency Cloud, and they had huge problems with risks. So there are threats around money laundering in Somalia or Afghanistan, or kind of any global payments company will have issues with the risks around beneficiaries, payments, different terrorist groups, and particularly where you have this global payment network, you need to understand who the beneficiaries are. And really to be able to scale a business and get a return on those billions of dollars of fintech VC money, you have to understand precisely what the risks are, but also do it at a really effective cost. So there was always a huge problem, and you've seen billions of dollars of fines every year. You've seen the costs of compliance really, really swell. So the purpose of the company was to solve that problem, and the solution for us was getting into the core of that data set. And so whilst we have lots of companies who are using it directly who are well known, we also have companies who are reselling data as well. So often if you aren't accessing data directly, you'll be doing it by one of our partners, via an identity partner or banking core provider. So really the goal is to prove demonstrably that it's far superior to any other system or data set, and also to make sure that it's global and used by everyone. So really the goal with everything we're doing is to make ComplyAdvantage and Comply Data the global uniform data set that's kind of used ubiquitously, and ultimately solving the problems of both terrorist financing, money laundering, but also the underlying operational overheads that exist.
Yeah, I suppose it becomes self-serving. The bigger and more expensive the product becomes, the more likelihood you have of becoming the de facto.
Yeah, and I think the reason I raised this $70 million is because I think it's the nature of data. I think so. What we also have is 400 million companies, directors, shareholders linked to all the bad people, right? So we have this massive graph, and the goal is to keep on expanding, deepening it, adding more dates of birth, incorporation dates, facts, nature of businesses. So it's really like that has to be a single data set. And the nature of data is that if you miss one fact, right? If you miss the fact that Steve wasn't actually linked to that person, or Currency Cloud wasn't actually the shareholder in that company, then it radically alters your perception of risk. So the nature of data is it has to be a single data set, and has to be extremely broad, extremely accurate, and therefore it has to be something that's absolutely huge. So I think really in terms of what we're doing, it's only really begun in terms of the size, depth, scope, granularity, quality, speed, accuracy of data.
Yeah, it's quite something. So where next? What are you working on? What's the next big thing for ComplyAdvantage?
So we were really excited last month to launch Comply Launch. So we're now giving the product like to every startup fintech for free, and that's both the money laundering data, but also the KYB data. So anyone selling to companies or people can get information on every company and director in the whole world and every risk about them. And so I think for us, it's all about deepening, broadening, and expanding that data set. So we've got $70 million in the bank, and we've been hiring huge amounts of people, like 14 engineers last week. And really, we want to make Tanya in your compliance team and Mike, the CEO, be able to really scale hugely to meet the kind of different aspirations that you as a firm have, but also reduce both the cost and the risk. So and that's really a kind of 10-year project in terms of making data perfect, scalable, broad, that's constantly adding more information about it as well.
But Comply Launch, you're democratizing access to super high quality compliance capabilities to even startup fintechs. I mean, that's awesome. That's only going to fuel the ecosystem, isn't it?
So I think no firm by themselves would spend $50 million a year, or the kind of 10 years of construction to get to this stage, building it themselves. And so we build it once, give everyone access to it, and then share that infrastructure. And so like Currency Cloud, who are enabling fintechs, other companies to get access to a global payments network. Similarly here, what we're allowing is anyone with a great idea or particular geographical or sector focus to get access to the very best tools, which will keep regulators and bankers happy and allow them to really take that vision and make it accessible. So in that respect, absolutely, it is democratizing access to fintech by reducing the risk and the cost of compliance.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, look, exciting times for you, Charlie. You've achieved a hell of a lot, and by the sound of it, you've got great plans to keep moving forward, and it's brilliant to see. How do people get hold of you?
So our website is ComplyAdvantage.com, and at Twitter, ComplyAdvantage. I'm Charlie at ComplyAdvantage.com if you want to email me. But I think, like Currency Cloud, it's just the beginning. So I think in 5 years' time will be a different game, I think, entirely.
Brilliant. Well, Charlie, it's been great to see you, and I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks very much for joining us today, and best of luck.
Pleasure, Steve. Great.
Cheers. Bye-bye.